You're going to work for 40 years, and when you stop, the Canadian government is going to send you less money every month than someone earning minimum wage at a part-time job. That is not a worst-case scenario. That is the average. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why, and exactly what the people who actually retire early in this country do differently. Stay with me because the most uncomfortable number in this video is coming in about 2 minutes, and it is going to change how you think about every retirement plan you have ever seen. Let us start with what the government actually pays. The Canada Pension Plan, CPP, has a maximum monthly payment of $1,507.65 at age 65. That number appears on the government website, and it is technically accurate and practically misleading, because almost nobody receives the maximum. To get that amount, you need to have worked full-time for roughly 39 years, making maximum contributions every single year without interruption. The actual average CPP payment for new retirees in early 2026 is $803.76 per month. That is the real number, the one that reflects what the typical Canadian who worked, paid into the system, and followed every rule actually receives. Then add Old Age Security, OAS, which pays a maximum of $742.31 per month for Canadians aged 65 to 74 right now. Add the average CPP to the maximum OAS, and you get $1,546 per month from the Canadian government after a full working life. The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Canada crossed $2,000 per month in 2026. The government retirement system does not cover your rent. That is arithmetic, not opinion. Now, here's the number I mentioned. A BMO retirement survey found that Canadians believe they need an average of $1.7 million to retire comfortably. $1.7 million. And Statistics Canada data on what Canadian families approaching retirement actually have accumulated shows that the majority of households are nowhere close to that number. The gap between what Canadians think they need and what they actually have is not a small difference. It is the central financial crisis of retirement planning in this country right now, and almost nobody is talking about it directly. Most retirement content either tells you the 1.7 million number without telling you how far most people are from it, or it tells you not to worry because CPP and OAS will fill the gap. They will not. The math does not work. And the earlier you want to retire, the more dramatically the math does not work. If you are still watching, hit the like button right now. This channel does not do the comfortable version of this conversation. We do the accurate version. Subscribe if that is what you are here for, because what comes next is where most retirement videos stop. Here's the gap that almost nobody explains clearly. If you stop working at 55, which is a completely legal goal, and increasingly what Canadians say they want, the government gives you absolutely nothing for the first 5 years. No CPP, no OAS, zero. Then, at age 60, you can start CPP. But the government permanently reduces your payment by 0.6% for every month you collect before 65. Start at 60 and you lose 36% of your CPP payment for life. On the average CPP amount, that reduction takes your monthly payment from $803 down to approximately $514 per month for life. That reduction never reverses. It is baked into every payment you will ever receive. And here is the piece that makes the timing decision even harder. If you take CPP at 60 and you live past age 82, you will have received less total money over your lifetime than if you had waited until 65. The average Canadian life expectancy now sits past 82. The system is not rewarding you for taking it early. It is penalizing you for living long. And OAS does not start until 65, regardless of what you do. So if you retire at 55, which sounds like the dream, the government is your financial partner for 0 of the first 10 years, and only a partial partner for the decade after that. There's a cost in the early retirement calculation that almost nobody prices correctly, and it does not appear in any retirement calculator I have ever seen. The day you hand in your resignation, your dental coverage ends, your prescription drug plan ends, your vision coverage ends, provincial health care covers hospital visits and your family doctor, but it does not cover the category of expenses that becomes more significant every year you get older. A single dental crown costs between $1,000 and $2,000. Prescription medications for Canadians without employer coverage average several $100s per month by the time they reach their 60s. Glasses, physiotherapy, hearing aids, none of it covered. These are not catastrophic costs, but they are real, recurring, and almost universally missing from the spreadsheets people build when they are planning to retire at 55. The person who projects $45,000 per year in retirement expenses frequently discovers that healthcare-related costs alone consume $5,000 to $8,000 annually. That was never in the plan. Price this in before you build your number, not after. There's also a question almost nobody asks before they retire early. And it is not a financial question. It is this: what are you going to do with the next 30 years? This sounds like a lifestyle question, but it has direct financial consequences. The Canadians who retire early and find purpose, whether that is part-time consulting, volunteering, a small business, creative work, tend to spend less, stay healthier, and draw down their portfolios more slowly than projected. The Canadians who retire early with no structure discover that unstructured time is more expensive than they expected. More travel, more spending, more filling of time with purchases. The research on retirement spending consistently shows that the first 5 years after leaving work are the highest spending years of retirement, not the last. People are healthy, they have energy, and they have finally given themselves permission to spend. Building that reality into your projection, rather than assuming your spending will drop the moment you stop working, is the difference between a plan that holds and one that quietly collapses in year 3. Now let us talk about the tools that actually work. The tax-free savings account, the TFSA, is the single most important instrument in the Canadian tax code for anyone planning to retire before 65. The annual contribution limit in 2026 is $7,000. If you have been eligible since the program launched in 2009 and have never contributed, your total available room right now is $109,000. Growth inside a TFSA is completely tax-free. Withdrawals are completely tax-free. And the piece that matters most for early retirees, TFSA withdrawals do not count as income for any government benefit calculation. They do not affect your OAS. They do not affect GIS eligibility. They are invisible to the Canada Revenue Agency when calculating your taxable income. A retiree drawing $50,000 per year entirely from a TFSA reports zero of that to the CRA for benefit purposes. This is not a loophole. It is the design of the account. The practical implication is significant. Two people with identical savings, one held entirely in an RRSP, one held entirely in a TFSA, will have dramatically different retirement experiences. The RRSP holder pays tax on every withdrawal and risks losing part of their OAS. The TFSA holder pays nothing and keeps every government dollar they are entitled to. The account type matters as much as the amount inside it. And most Canadians are still weighting their savings toward RRSP contributions, because that is what the system incentivized for decades. The calculus has shifted. For anyone within 15 years of their retirement target, the TFSA is where the priority belongs. The RRSP is more complicated. And this is where the most surprising trap in the Canadian retirement system lives. Most people understand the RRSP correctly. Your money grows tax-free and you pay tax when you withdraw. What most people do not think about is what happens when they turn 71. At 71, the government requires you to convert your RRSP. And once that conversion happens, you are forced to withdraw a minimum amount every single year, whether you need the money or not. That minimum starts at roughly 5% of the total balance and increases every year after that. Every dollar of those forced withdrawals is fully taxable income. Now here is where the trap closes. If you worked hard, saved consistently, and built a large RRSP, exactly what every financial advisor told you to do, you arrive at 71 with a balance that generates large mandatory taxable withdrawals every year. Stack your CPP on top of that. Stack your OAS on top of that. And now look at what happens. The OAS clawback threshold for 2026 is $95,323. For every dollar your income exceeds that number, the government takes back 15 cents of your OAS pension. If your income reaches approximately $154,700, your OAS is clawed back entirely. The system is designed so that the Canadians who saved the most, who were the most financially responsible throughout their entire working lives, face the highest risk of losing part or all of the government pension they spent decades expecting. Saving more can literally cost you government income in retirement. That is not a warning about extreme cases. That is a structural feature of how the system works. And it is almost never explained in plain language outside of a financial advisor's office. The solution, if you have the time to execute it, is to draw down your RRSP deliberately before you turn 71, so the forced withdrawals do not push your income over that threshold. And this is where early retirement creates one of its only genuine planning advantages. If you stop working at 55, you have a decade of low or zero employment income before CPP and OAS begin. That window is the ideal time to pull money out of your RRSP at the lowest possible tax rate, paying a small tax now rather than a large one later when CPP and OAS are stacking on top of your forced withdrawals. Most people do not do this because it feels counterintuitive to pay tax voluntarily. The people who understand the system do it because the alternative is paying more tax later and losing government income they were counting on. Here is what the honest picture looks like for early retirement in Canada right now. If you stop working at 55, you need enough in accessible accounts to fund 10 years of living expenses before CPP begins at a reduced rate at 60, and 15 years before OAS begins at 65. Using $45,000 per year as a baseline, which is livable but not comfortable in most major Canadian cities, that is $450,000 in accessible assets just to cover the runway before a single government dollar arrives. And that $45,000 figure assumes you own your home outright. Add rent or a remaining mortgage and the number climbs significantly. It also assumes no major dental or medical expenses, which at 55 and beyond is an assumption most people should not make. The real number for a comfortable early retirement runway in Canada, outside of a small town or rural area, is closer to $600,000 to $700,000 in accessible tax-efficient savings before you walk out the door. On top of that, you need to manage your RRSP drawdown deliberately to avoid the forced withdrawal trap at 71. You need to price in the healthcare costs your employer was subsidizing, and you need to accept that when government income eventually begins, CPP plus OAS, it will likely land somewhere between $1,400 and $2,100 per month depending on your contribution history and when you claim. That is a supplement, not a foundation. And the earlier you retire, the smaller that supplement becomes and the longer you carry the full weight before it arrives. The system is not broken. It is simply designed around assumptions that no longer match the country Canadians are actually living in. Longer lives, higher costs, and earlier retirement intentions have all outpaced what CPP and OAS were built to deliver. The Canadians who retire on their own terms are not doing anything magical. They are looking at the actual numbers, identifying where the gaps are, and building around them before the gaps become emergencies. That is what this channel is here to help you do. Subscribe to Maple Market Brief, and drop your actual retirement target in the comments. Not the age you think sounds responsible, the real number you're working toward. The conversation down there is always more useful than what you will find in a bank brochure.